A few months ago, I ended up swapping over from Canon to Sony, and no matter which side of the camera world that I was on, I've always wanted to own a 70-200 lens. Both companies make amazing lenses, however, I never ended up getting one when I was using Canon, and when I bought the Sony, I chose to pull the trigger and I picked this one up. It is huge. It is literally bigger than my head. Even with the lens hood, it is massive. It's just ridiculous. But overall, I do think that this lens is something that most people will absolutely love, no matter what type of photography you do. For me, the most recent experience of using this thing has been at the British Motor Show, which happened a couple of months ago, and it was an absolute blast to use this and this camera to get some amazing shots. So for some quick rundowns in terms of this lens, the first one is obviously that it is 70-200mm. This is pretty much perfect for most people. It's why I didn't decide to go for something like a 24-105 just yet. I do want to go for one eventually, as I do think that lens is like the perfect travel lens, for example, if you want to just be able to get everything in one go. However, because I had a 28-70 plus the 85mm, I chose to go for this so that I could get those more longer ranged shots, and it has been amazing. I'd say one big thing though for anyone who wants this lens, you'll be taken a lot more seriously with this thing. It is ridiculous. For example, the car show that I went to, we ended up getting the tickets for free because we were taking photos, me and my girlfriend, and we were taking some photos of some cars, and yeah, the guy just came up to us. He had one of the motor show cars there, and he was just like, oh, how often have you been doing photography? How long have you been doing it for? And I do genuinely think it is because of this lens. I think if I had the 85mm on, nobody would have batted an eye because it just looks like your stereotypical camera. But this thing looks way more professional than what I think a lot of people actually realize. It's also a full frame lens, so that's one thing to take into account. So obviously double check your camera, make sure you can actually use it. But in most cases, if you're a Sony user, this is a superb buy. One thing that I will just mention as well real quick, as I think it needs to be, even though it's going to be in the title, is that this is the f4 version. This isn't the 2.8. I was tempted by that, but considering it is about £500 normally more expensive, I didn't really see the point in getting this, when for most people, in most scenarios, you don't necessarily need that lower aperture. And I will talk about that in a moment. However, there is a couple other bits around the actual lens itself that I want to discuss. You do have the ability to move around the mounting bracket, so if you do want to, then you can move it, and it just makes it a little bit easier on you than necessarily having to like swivel around everything all the time. But on top of that, you've also got some action buttons on the lens, which is nice. I never use them, I'll be honest. I've never found a reason to use them. Outside of that, my only complaint with this lens, and I'll be honest, it's the only thing that really annoyed me, is the ability to swap the focusing ring from a full range to 3mm. Which, oh my god, it is annoying. I don't understand why. In most cases, I don't think most people would use it, but I don't understand why it exists for this, I'll be honest. You guys can let me know if you ever use it on yours. However, the reason why I say it is one of the most annoying things for me is I remember at the motor show taking photos, and I was using this lens as my primary choice. I was considering using the 85, however, because of where you're stood when things like drifting is happening, you're going to want to get some shots and they're going to be further away. You're going to be utilizing that 200mm. But then you're swiveling around to get that zoom in, and you will accidentally clip many times, or at least I kept doing it, and you don't notice it because one, the cars are too loud. Even if the cars weren't so loud, you wouldn't hear the button being moved, and you don't feel yourself moving the button. You're literally doing that, and then out of nowhere, like you're like literally just here, clips it, and you're now in 3mm, and now some of your photos are going to be out of focus. So it is something that can happen, and it did happen for me. So obviously, might be something to think about when you are using this. For some people, you might be perfectly fine. You might be not as stupid as me, constantly accidentally clipping it. However, I would say that that is still not a reason not to buy it. I think it's still an absolute great purchase. Outside of that, this lens does come with an autofocus to manual focus mode. Again, I said this in my Sony review recently about the 85mm. I don't understand why most of these lenses don't just come with that off standard. I don't know if it's just that Canon do almost always, like almost every single Canon lens I've ever owned always had an autofocus to manual focus option. But yeah, it does have one on this. It does also allow you to change it from a steady to non-steady, so it will at least help you out if your camera doesn't already have it built in. And then we do also have this mode option, which personally I haven't utilized in any way yet. And as I mentioned, my main use case so far for this thing has been car photography. I haven't used it for too much else recently, as we haven't really been planning anything. I've been too busy to kind of want to plan out doing different shoots and that sort of thing. However, in most cases with this for cars, it's been perfect. I either use this or my 85mm. In terms of the bokeh effect that you get with your 85, in almost every scenario, you're going to get the same thing with this 200mm. When it's fully zoomed in, all the way down to f4, you're probably going to get bordering the same bokeh effect. So it is actually very good and doesn't require you to get the 2.8. So let's just discuss though that exact thing is, should you go for the 2.8? Or should you go for the f4? I personally think the f4 is fine for 99% of people. Not 99% as in just a figure I'm just randomly whipping up out of my head. 99% literally. I don't think most people would need the 2.8 outside of people who just simply want it for the sake of wanting it, which if you do, fair enough. I'm the same person who has some Apple products that I hardly use, like an iPad mini. I absolutely love it. However, I don't use it all the time. I would be lying if I said that I use it every single moment of the day, but it's something that I wanted. So with this lens, I could understand you choosing that you just want to get the thing that's a little bit more better. But in regards to it, the only reason why I'd say you would want to get the 2.8 version instead of this lens is whether or not you desire being able to shoot in darker lighting. That's about it. Realistically, outside of that, you're never going to have a use case for that 2.8 because it's still not enough to have the full bokeh effect that you get with something like a 1.8. However, with this, they're going to look incredibly similar in almost every scenario. And until you get the 2.8, you're not really going to care too much about that. But again, if you want it, go for it. And if you shoot in lower light settings, absolutely, I can understand the reasons for it. So overall, I would 100% recommend going for this Sony lens. I do think it is bordering perfect. Right now, as of the time of recording this video, which is the day before its release, so hopefully it's still the same, I'll have an Amazon affiliate link down below, but this lens costs £1,000, which depresses me. I bought this for £1,200 just a couple of months ago, and right now it's £500 off. Somehow it's £500 off, but yeah, if it is the case that you are after this, you will find it on deals throughout the year, hopefully even moving forward. And again, that 2.8 will also be linked down below if you are interested. And eventually, one day, if I decide to get that, I can do a lens comparison as well. So that all being said, if this did help you in any way when it comes to choosing if you want to go for this lens, or if you just wanted some information about it, then hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions for me, let me know down below and I'll give you some feedback as well. But that all being said, hopefully you did enjoy this video. I do also have a company called Minimal Designs where I sell wallets and just other little bits that we're working on in the process. So hopefully in the future, things like some desk accessories and that sort of thing. So if you are interested, make sure to go check that out down below as well and pick yourself up a wallet there. So that all being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.